Kevin texted me about 6:30, 7 o'clock this morning and said, should we postpone or do we go forward? And it didn't take very long. We thought, exactly this. We've got to lean in. And I was thinking about this, how many of you know when your birth certificate expires? Anybody know the date? Well, none of us do, right? We had someone very capable in 31 years that came onto the scene in our nation and moved 3,500 chapters of young people to love America. That's a great thing. That's a lifetime's work. 3,500 chapters of young people. And you guys, I can't help but think that what we're talking about tonight is what the founders gave to us. That's our heritage. It's our inheritance. They gave us a system that we don't have to have complete unity to be unified. It was the most radical governing system that anybody had ever heard about. That you can do you in your state and you do you in your state, and we don't have to all do the exact same thing. And we'll get along for the basic things that make us a nation, but all of the other things that concern our life, liberty, property, we do our own thing. I was talking last night, I was speaking to a group last night, and I remember I was speaking in Idaho, and I'm driving back from Idaho, and you guys have all been there, but you're driving back and everything is potatoes, right? You're going potatoes this and potato truck and the big pivots and potatoes here and potatoes there, everything's potatoes. Signs on the door and the billboards and everything's potatoes. And you hit the Utah border, no more potatoes. It just stops, right? It completely stops. We're different in our states. And it was actually that difference that made America great. That Idaho can do potatoes, and we don't do potatoes in Utah. We'll get them from them and eat them when we want them. But, we don't do math equations in school about potatoes, and they do that there. They designed a system where we could be diverse, very, very diverse, and still be a united states. And we've lost that because we've lost the structure. That's what we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to talk about that structure that allows us to be different and still be unified. We can have diversity and unity, and that was radical. That was radical. Last week we talked about how we're the boss, and we talked about this is a 5-minute method to restore American self-government. We go through these 6 lessons, and we'll get to the end in these communities. 5 minutes we can do our job as the boss of America. 6 simple principles, 5 minutes a week. Is anybody did that become too much for anybody, 5 minutes a week? Do you know any other people that could give 5 minutes a week? Invite them. Because we're only going to do this as we get to critical mass. Invite them to join us. We're going to take 6 lessons. That's going to take some time to understand the principles, and then 5 minutes a week. And if we care about this thing going forward, I think it's a pretty good return on investment. So you can learn more at the website. There's the videos. We're putting the videos on here. If you go to this impact communities, these impact councils here for all the different states, you can get the videos there, and then that's when we join together. And some weeks when it gets really hard, like maybe even this week, you don't even have to do 5 minutes. You can do 30 seconds. And we'll share things to communicate, but make sure that we're on the job with the agents that we hire. All right, let's go back to this. No free government or the blessings of liberty can be preserved to any people, but by a frequent recurrence to fundamental principles. You guys, they put this in every state constitution. Every single one of them. In the Utah Constitution, it's Article 1, Section 27. Every state constitution. I think they meant it. Frequent recurrence. Not read it once in a book, not 5th grade civics, not 8th grade. frequent recurrence. And I can tell you that none of the state legislators, the 8,300 plus in the United States, have had any training on the fundamental principles. Law Review article, remember, they said fundamental principles. Number one, popular sovereignty. The people are sovereign. The people are the boss. Number two, federalism. This structure of our government we're going to talk about tonight that allows us to have diversity and unity. Those are the fundamental principles we're supposed to go back to again and again and again. How many times have we done that in our life? We don't talk about it. If we want diversity and unity, we've got to understand the most unique governing structure in the history of the world. If we want to just fight it out, then let's just keep watching Dancing with the Stars and we don't worry about the most ingenious governing structure ever devised. I don't know about you, but I want liberty and perpetuity of free government. I want diversity and unity. So let's see what we got here. 6 principles. They're simple. Number one, we talked about last week. You're the boss. You are literally the boss, the sovereign, the ultimate authority, the supreme, the highest authority in our nation. That's you. That takes some work to be the boss of an organization. Tonight we're going to talk about it's the structure. And this structure is so exceptional that it allows you to do your job as the boss from wherever you live. You can live where you stand, right in your legislative district, right in your Senate district. You can fix the entire United States of America from right where you live by growing your influence. That's what was so ingenious about what they did. Next week we're going to talk about how it's the states that are responsible for this structure, which means then the people that we hire right in our legislative district, in our Senate district, our governor, our attorney general, our sheriff, those people that we hire, the states are responsible for that structure. That means the people that we hire right here is the most important decision that we make, the most important hire we ever do. We need to know if they've got the skills and the ability. Then we need to know how to delegate our sovereign responsibility. If we're the boss and we're not going to do all the work ourselves, then we got to figure out how do we influence other people to do that job as the sovereign for us. And that's class number 6, when we learn how to leverage our voice. When we learn how to leverage our voice in a legislative district, a Senate district, in a state, and then we get states leveraging together. That's how we control this nation. 5 minutes, everybody still in? Is that too much for anybody? Even if you got to do it every single week? All right, let's go. Let's figure it out. So this is the impact community. We can do it 5 minutes a week when we all lift a little bit right where we are. And so get in that impact community, get other people in there, and we're going to start joining the impact communities we've got here in Utah already. That's where that whole idea started. But it's only going to work when we get Utah impact communities joining with other states, and now we've got critical mass throughout the nation. There's a Facebook page. I'm going to encourage you. I mean, you've got the ability. We're not nailing notes to trees anymore, guys. We're not going horseback town to town. So get your phone out, take pictures, post them, share it, text it, video it, Instagram it, whatever you do. I mean, can you imagine what Thomas Jefferson, Ben Franklin, Thomas Paine would do? They were tearing off drum heads and writing things on that so they could share. We don't have to do that. We can share with thousands of people from right where we're sitting. Take advantage of that. All right, so last week we talked about that the first and fundamental principle in the science of government was that the people are sovereign. We've been conditioned to think we're at the bottom of the stack. And that's where we've got to get back to understanding. They designed the entire nation that you're in charge. Let's go through here, and you know, we remember this guy, right? This is my little grandson, and he says, "Don't see me, Mom." We know that a 2-year-old makes a mess. It's what they do by nature. And if we're not keeping an eye on the 2-year-old, they make a mess. It's not the 2-year-old's fault. If you say, "Hey, you sit right there and don't you get into trouble," and we turn our back, the 2-year-old's going to get into trouble because it's what they do. And so it's our fault if we don't have the double checks and back on that. And that's how they designed our government, because they knew government gets in trouble when there's not limits and checks and balance. And so if we're not doing that, if we're not keeping an eye on our government as the boss, if we're not showing up, it gets in trouble. It's our fault. They designed it that way. That's the good news and the bad news. We're responsible for this. the unsustainable debt and all the things going on. But the good news is we're responsible to do something about it. As it stands right now, we're going to leave it worse than we got it. First generation in the history of America. That we're on track to leave it worse than we found it, unless we do something about it. And that's what we're going to talk about. James Wilson, one of my favorite guys, right? The first and fundamental principle. They built American government. The very first principle of American government. People are sovereign. The ultimate power, the supreme authority. We're going to talk about how we get there from here. So when government says, don't see me, and it's going to make a mess, we've got the checks and the balance and the limits, and we put that back into place. It's not just red king has the executive order pen, then the blue king or queen has the executive order pen, and back we go. That's not our country. It's not about fighting over one person controls our entire life, and then another person controls our entire life. That's the genius of our system. Remember this, right? I can't do what you ask. I was born to be a king. We've got to get that understanding back to know how to govern. That's what we're talking about, because it doesn't take a majority. It just takes an irate, tireless minority keen on setting brush fires in people's minds. So I want you to think of some people. You're going to light a tiny little fire, Tammy, just like you're talking about. We light that fire and say, no, this is for real. Can you spare 5 minutes and we'll show you how this works? The videos are online. I'd encourage you to just come watch them and see. This is how we govern our country, how we operate our country. Because what's the alternative, you guys?
Lose it.
The alternative is we lose it, and we just lose it in a bad way. And that's not the way this thing goes. And it's not as hard as you think. Here's what we're going to talk about tonight. It's this exceptional structure that allows us to lift from right where we stand. And if I do my job right tonight, you're going to know the difference between a single republic. We don't even talk about that. We talk about democracy. And they said democracy commits suicide. If you're just 50% plus one, Benjamin Franklin said democracy is like 2 wolves and a lamb arguing over what's for lunch. A republic is a well-armed lamb. You've got the laws that defend the minority. We've got to know that, and that's just single republic. We're going to talk about the difference between that and a compound republic, and then we're going to memorize the Constitution tonight. I'm going to memorize, I promise, you'll have the Constitution memorized before we're done. I love this quote. So this is Justice Scalia in the NFIB, the Obamacare decision. He said, the structure of our government is central to liberty. Not the policies, not the politicians, the structure of our government. And that's what we're talking about. So Franklin, remember last week we talked about a republic if you can keep it. Now we're going to talk about what kind of republic. Because it's a very unique republic that we have. It's not just any old republic. It's critical. In a single republic, Madison tells us, that the checks, the usurpation is checked by dividing the government into different branches. That's what we talk about in 5th grade and 8th grade, right? Executive, legislative, judicial, and that's our government. And it looks something like this, right? We talk about, executive, legislative, judicial, and if we know those 3, then we get the gold star. That's not our government. He tells us in a single republic that's the case, but in the compound republic of America, we first divide the power between 2 governments. And they control each other as a double security to the rights of the people. We're the boss, all power resides here, and then we first divide it between 2 governments. That's the genius of America, 2 governments and not one. And they tell us exactly why, because that provides a double security to the rights of the people. We don't have one government that just takes all the power, and then we go clear over here, and then 4 years later we whip over here, and then we got to fight over who controls this one, and then we fight over who controls that one. That's not the way America was designed. 2 governments, not one. So most of our daily life, we deal with the stuff right at home. And they actually tell us that our government is supposed to be so divided and balanced with limits and checks that it's constantly restrained by the other governments. Limits, divisions, balance, checks, restraints. That's the key to American government. Not just executive, legislative, judicial at one level. So we know that then we've got these 2 governments, right? So that it would kind of look like that, but that's not the end of the story, because Madison tells us the powers delegated to the national government, they're few and defined. Powers reserved to the states, numerous and indefinite. That makes a difference, doesn't it? The powers that are delegated to the federal government, they're primarily external objects: war, peace, negotiation, foreign commerce. Taxation is related to those foreign objects, is the way this was designed. First principles, they talk about that the federal government is a government of limited power, very limited power. The power is reserved to the states. Everything that concerns our daily life, everything that concerns life, liberty, property of the people, internal order, improvement, the prosperity of the state, basically everything that concerns our daily life, that's here in our state, right where we live, right where we stand. We can have meetings like this with our state representative. Our representatives that control the things that concern our lives, they live right around the corner from us. That's the way that was set up. So this is what our government looks like. Have you ever seen a diagram like that as our government? We don't talk about it at all, do we? We talk about just this, and that's about 15% of our government. Is it any wonder we're about 85% off base? Right? If we don't even know the org chart, is it any wonder that it feels like we're kind of out of control? Well, they told us this is called federalism, this structure with two governments, not one, and a very careful allocation of power. They call that federalism, American federalism. They said it was like splitting the atom of sovereignty. It was the most ingenious thing. They said that was our unique contribution to political science and theory in America. Not the executive, legislative, judicial. Everybody knew about that. It was this splitting the sovereignty between two governments and controlling each other that was the key. It was the insight of the framers that freedom is enhanced by the creation of two governments, not one. We don't talk about it. Federalism serves to assign political responsibility, not obscure it. When you've got responsibility to two different governments, you've got two of them controlling our rights. So this is the rest of the story on what Scalia told us. The fragmentation of power produced by the structure of our government is central to liberty, and when we destroy that structure, we put liberty at peril. The structure is critical. Ends up feeling all like that, doesn't it? Right? Job of the Fed 1 year, and then job of the Fed for the other half of America, and we end up going back and forth, and it just feels like all jumbled up. It's not the way it's supposed to be. Hamilton, the big government guy, tells us the balance between the two governments is of the utmost importance. We need to pay peculiar attention to that balance. He tells us why again, because it provides a double security to the rights of the people. The balance between those two is critical. True story, you guys. My 28th anniversary, I talked my wife into going to Colorado to look at greenhouses because I like growing tomatoes and stuff. And because she loves me enough, she said, okay, well, let's go do that. And the only thing that was the saving grace was it was a place in Colorado called Pagosa Springs, and they have this hot spring spa, you know. So we go and we look at the greenhouse. The greenhouses were really cool, you guys. These geodesic dome greenhouses, they were really awesome. But we get done looking at the greenhouses, and so then we go do the spa, and then it's time to go do the massage thing. And so I'm in the massage room, and I'm just, you know, hanging out, relaxing. This masseuse was a guy from New York. He's a 30-year transplant to Colorado from New York. He's got Birkenstocks on, and he's got a mountain bike in the massage room. And I'm sitting there, we're talking, you know, and going along, and he finds out I'm in the Utah legislature, and without exception, when you tell someone you're in the state legislature, the first question they ask is, what do you guys do? We know about Congress, but what do you guys do, right? So I'm trying to explain to this transplant from New York, this masseuse guy with the mountain bike. I said, well, your bike, it has writing on the tires, right? He says, well, yeah. Do you know what the writing is? He says, well, sure, it's the tire pressure. Do you know more or less what the tire pressure is on your bike? He says, sure, it's about 55 pounds per square inch. I said, okay, well, what if your front tire was 105 and your back tire's less than 5? He says, oh, man, that'd be a disaster. Well, what if you just rode the bike harder? That would fix the problem, wouldn't it? No, that doesn't work. Well, what if you just yank the handlebars harder to the left, or you yank it harder to the right? That'd fix the problem, wouldn't it? No, that wouldn't do it. I said, I know the solution. What if you got Lance Armstrong all hopped up on steroids to ride your bike? That'd fix the problem, wouldn't it? No, you have to fix the balance in the tires. Now, you guys, this is October of 2016. Hillary Clinton had just made a pass through Colorado in the Trump-Clinton presidential debate, right? And all the whole stuff was going on. And he said, you got to fix the balance in the tires. I said, well, that's my job as a state representative. My job is to fix the balance in the tires, because you see, in our governing system, there's two spheres. And they actually called it that. There are two spheres of government. And they have certain tire pressure. And right now, the front tire, the federal tire, is so bloated it's about to explode. And the back tire, the states, is so flat it's about to chew the rubber off the rim. And all we talk about is, should Trump or Clinton ride the bike? And should they yank the handlebars to the left or yank the handlebars to the right? I said, my job is to fix the tire pressure, because it doesn't matter who we get to ride that bike even harder. If we don't have the tire pressure fixed, we're just going to ruin it anyway. And you guys, this guy got so excited, he literally stopped and he kind of jumped up and down. He said, I've learned more about government in 2 minutes than I've known my whole life. He said, you have to tell everybody this. So in honor of him, I'm sharing this with you. It's the structure that takes us to that pursuit of happiness. And if it's all out of balance and we're just trying to ride it harder or yank it one way or the other, we're just going to ruin it until we get the right pressure that it was supposed to operate at. Healthy balance of power between the state and the federal government reduces the risk of tyranny and abuse from either front. Two governments accord more liberty than one. This requires the realization that there are two distinct and discernible lines of political responsibility. We have to know what we delegated to the federal government, what we reserved to the states. We've got to know that tire pressure if we're going to operate this government, right? The two distinct lines, one between the citizens and the federal government, the second between the citizens and the states. Most important thing we need to know. All right, now guys, I want to give you just kind of a little chance to a little quiz on this to think it through. I want you to think of the biggest circle you can possibly think of. Right? Just think of the biggest round circle thing you could ever imagine. Do you have it back there? You think about it? Is it bigger than the universe? Because in our government, we started with the concept that God had all power, that His jurisdiction, His authority, His dominion was unlimited. And that's the first circle. The second circle, if you think of a circle the size of the earth in comparison, all power was delegated to the people on earth. That's what we talked about last week, right? First and fundamental principle, all power, all dominion resides from the people. Remember, it was George Mason. We should buckle it on as our armor and wear it as our breastplate, that all power resides from the people. Well, then we gave to government, all government, any government, authority about the size of a basketball in comparison to our power, right? Deriving their power from the consent of the governed. We, the people, we gave just a little bit of our power to government. You know, I'll bet you didn't give the government the power to tell you what kind of glasses to get, right? And how to comb your hair and what kind of hat you would wear and what you'd have for breakfast and, you know, what time you get up and what you do for work. There's a gajillion things we didn't delegate to any government. We govern those things. We make those decisions. That's a question we don't ask nearly often enough. Is that something we delegated to any government? We only gave a small amount of things to government. Now, of that small amount compared to the size of the earth, we delegated the size of a penny to the federal government. We delegated very, very few things to the federal government. Everything else we kept right at home where we could keep an eye on it. Those are those lines of jurisdiction, if you think of those circles on how they divided up the government. Federal government and the state government, they're just different agents and trustees of the people. You hired two different governments with two different roles and responsibilities to secure your rights. If we're only focusing on one and not the whole organization, does it make sense that it feels lopsided? That we're trying to ride a bike with a bloated tire and a flat tire? We've got to make sure we understand the responsibilities. They were instituted with different powers and different purposes, but the ultimate authority resides with the people. So let's look at it. They talked about it. They talked about this constitutional line. Jefferson, I wish to preserve the line drawn by the federal Constitution between the general and the particular government. Particular governments means the states, as it stands at present, to take every prudent means of preventing either from stepping over their line, from stepping over their proper balance. You get James Wilson again. The Constitution deserves praise for the accuracy with which we drew that line between the state and the federal government. Check this out. He says, their powers, the powers between the general government and the states, are as minutely enumerated and defined as was possible. They knew the tire pressure. Now here's your quiz, okay? See if you can figure out who this is. There's another line. Congress has been given the right to legislate on particular subjects, but this is not the case in the matter of the great number of vital problems of government, such as public utilities and banks and insurance and business and agriculture, education, social welfare, and a dozen other important features. In these, Washington must not be encouraged to interfere. Who do you think would say something like that? What's that? Davy Crockett. That'd be a good guess, right?
Washington.
Washington be a great guess. Jefferson be a great guess. FDR, right? When he was governor running for president, for 150 years, you guys, we knew where that constitutional line was. We knew what was delegated to the federal government, those very few things, and we knew what was reserved to the states. Every single one of these things now, right? Public utilities, banks, insurance, business, agriculture, education, social welfare. They've all been blurred and taken over. We're supposed to keep that line and that tire pressure maintained. But
FDR did not remain true to that statement.
yeah, when he was president, he just took off and did whatever he wanted to, right? Because there was a Great Depression and we were sick and we were busy and we were poor. Government always grows in the name of love, and it always grows when we're busy and in trouble and we've got something going on. And it's always going to grow in the name of love. We're going to help you out. We're going to help you with something. And government's going to grow. And we're going to take care of you. And there's another $2 trillion deficit. You guys, until right then, until 1930, our government ran on 3% of GDP. Our federal government ran on 3% of GDP. We became the most powerful, wealthy government in the history of the world, with a national government that only took 3% of GDP. Today it's almost 28. We overspend $2 trillion a year. The debt is $38 trillion. The unfunded obligations are north of $100 trillion. We've got the most expensive, indebted government in the history of the world. But we became the greatest nation in the world with a national government that ran on 3% of GDP. So this is the blueprint. When we look at delegating our sovereign responsibility to our agents at the state, just do that. Just do that. Few and defined here, numerous and indefinite here, so I can keep an eye on it. I can show up to the meetings. I can know what's going on right here in my state. And we've got to make sure that our federal government is not interfering in all of these other things that affect our daily life. Start right there. And when you get done with that and you put it back into the right balance, we can talk about step 2. Step 1 is going to take a lot of work and a lot of time. But that's what we delegate to our state leaders. Next week, we're going to talk about the powers that the states have to do this. But here in the Bill of Rights, so after they had the Constitution, there was an argument over whether we needed a Bill of Rights. Many of them said the Constitution itself is a Bill of Rights, because if that's all we delegated, they don't have any of the other power. A constitution of limited powers is a Bill of Rights, but there were enough states that said, we're not going to ratify this unless we have a Bill of Rights. And so it was ratified on that promise. So when they got to doing a Bill of Rights, there's a preamble to the Bill of Rights. Now, there's not a song for this preamble, right? The Constitution, when we go, we the people, you guys can sing it, right? I can't sing it, and there's not one for this. But they said the Bill of Rights was to prevent misconstruction or abuse of the powers in the Constitution. We're going to add further declaratory and restrictive clauses. We're going to make sure you must do this, and don't you ever think about doing that. And that's what they put in the Bill of Rights. And of the declaratory and restrictive clauses, we first get the Ninth Amendment. We don't talk about the Ninth Amendment, but this is a big one, you guys. The Ninth Amendment says the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage the others retained by the people. What does that say? That says if we didn't give it to government, it stays right here. If we didn't give it to government, everything else stays with the people. Remember that circle? The earth and the basketball? So that's the earth, right? We got all the power. We gave you a basketball and we defined it. And if it's not there, we didn't give it to you. It stays right here. Then, to make it clear, the power's not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, is reserved to the states or the people. So not only did we say we gave some power to government, but to be very, very clear, we've got declaratory and restrictive clauses to avoid misconstruction or abuse. If we didn't give it to you, federal government, it stays with our states or with the people. We want to be double, extra, special, super clear about that. If we didn't delegate it to you, it stays right here. You're a government of limited powers. You're the limited partner. The states are the general partner. And we put that in the very document that was the condition for ratifying the Constitution. That's important stuff, you guys. Now, this is Barry Goldwater. He says, Constitution, I repeat, draws a sharp and clear line between the federal jurisdiction and state jurisdiction. We've got to know that tire pressure if we're going to operate that government, and we don't even talk about it anymore. So here we get to the point of memorizing the Constitution. You guys ready? You get your thinking caps out and get ready to roll. You're going to memorize the Constitution right now. You ready? If government, which government? Right? Think about that. If government is the Ninth Amendment. If we didn't delegate it to government, where does the power stay? Right here. So if government, did we delegate that to any government? If not, don't do it. If we didn't delegate it to government, stop right there. Don't pass go, don't collect $200. If we did delegate it to government, which one? Government far away, less accountable, less transparent? We delegated very, very few things. Government close to home, more accountable, more transparent. We can have meetings like this. You can call your representative. You can go to the hearings and the meetings, numerous and indefinite. Does that make sense? Do you see how that structure was designed? So that we can govern right where we live. We don't have to go to Washington. We don't have to have $1 billion. Because everything that is normal government is right here. If we keep the limits and the balance and the division and we understand the structure. And so why is it that we haven't been taught the structure of our government for 80 years? We don't talk about this stuff in school, right? This is the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is begging us to understand our Constitution, to understand the structure. Chief Justice Roberts, our cases refer to the general power of governing over here, possessed by the states, but not the federal government, as the police power. That's the name of the general power of the states governing. Now, it's not just the police, the guys with badges and guns that go after bad guys. It includes that. But the police power is the name of this general power of governing. Any of you serve in the military? Some of you did, right? What do you call cleaning up and taking care of the area? Policing the area, right? Policing the area, governing the area. So you think about that, generally taking care of the whole area, that's the police power. It's possessed by the states, not the federal government. The framers ensured that the powers which in the ordinary course of affairs that concern life, liberty, property of the people, they're held by governments more local, more accountable than a distant federal bureaucracy, few and defined, numerous and indefinite. The police power, this is Black's Law Dictionary, this is the exercise of the sovereign right of a government to promote order, safety, security, health, morals, general welfare. It's the essential attribute of government that's possessed by the states and not the federal government. The jurisdiction within the accepted definition of the police power is reserved to the states. There's no grant of that to Congress. It's the immense mass of legislation that's most advantageously exercised by the states. National authorities can't assume any supervision or control over that police power. Oh, I went back the other way. Supreme Court defined the police power, and they say that it's the same thing. It's to promote the health, peace, morals, education, good order of the people, increase the industries, develop the resources, add to the wealth and prosperity. Pretty much everything that is government, right here, right where we live. Not to the federal government. We're not taught this, right? The federalism canon. Do you know what a canon is when you're talking about constitutional interpretation? Not like shooting big old lead balls or anything, right? The canon is like a rule of interpretation. So this says the federalism rule of interpretation tells courts to presume that federal statutes do not preempt state laws because of the sovereignty states enjoy under the Constitution. That was just last year, you guys. That was the Supreme Court just last year. They're begging us to understand the structure of our government. Man is not free unless government is limited. Reagan tells us clear cause and effect that's as neat and predictable as a law of physics. As government expands, liberty contracts. And it's our job to make sure that that tire pressure, those limits and the division and the balance of governing power in that governing vehicle that takes us to the pursuit of happiness, the tolerancers are right. They designed a Maserati, well, I'm not going to go Maserati. They designed a Cadillac, a supercharged, hopped-up Cadillac vehicle to take us to liberty. And if we put irrigation water in it, and we don't change the oil, and we don't care about the tires, and we expect it to be a high-performance vehicle, we're going to get what we get. We have a high-performance government. Two governments, not one, a governing partnership, and those tolerances, those little dials on the balance and the temperatures matter a great deal, and it's our job to make sure that we're monitoring that, and we delegate to our state leaders to keep that in check. We're going to find out more about that next week. Next week, we're going to learn all about the powers of the states to do this. Last week, we talked about you're the boss. This week, we talk about this is what the vehicle looks like. We want to ride in that vehicle because that's the vehicle that takes us to where we're not at each other's throat. We're not yelling and screaming and shooting at each other because we want the one person to control the government the way we want this way and the other person to control the government. No. Pretty much everything that affects our life, we take care of right in our state. So if you like potatoes, you can have a state that's all about potatoes. And if you like surfing, you can have a state that's all about surfing. And if you like cool mountains and recreation and liberty and freedom and prosperity, you can live in Utah. And it's okay to be different, and we're going to stand together for world peace, and we're going to stand together for sound monetary system. That's the beauty of America. But those tolerances and balance matter tremendously. So here's your assignment, okay? Your assignment this week is to share with one other person what's the difference between a single republic and a compound republic? Right? What's the difference? Single republic, executive, legislative, judicial. Get your gold star, off you go. That's not American government because we first divide our power between two governments and they control each other as a double security to our rights. And most of that power we keep right at home where we can keep an eye on it. And that government that's like a 2-year-old, we've got the checks and the balance and we've got an eye on it because it's right here. That's the beauty of American government. And then the other one, you're going to teach your friend how to memorize the Constitution, right? You ready with me? If government, which government? Right there, right? Did we delegate it to any government? If not, stop right there. I didn't give you the power to tell me what glasses to buy and what hat I want to wear and what I'm going to have for breakfast and where I go on vacation. Not your role. I didn't give you that. And a gajillion other things I didn't give to government. If I did give it to government, did I give it to a government far away where I have less control and less power? I gave very, very few things there. Everything else I kept right here close to home. That's our government. That's our government. So we know that you're the boss. It's this brilliant, exceptional structure that allows us to lift right where we stand, govern the entire nation from right where we live. Because next week, we're going to talk about how the states and our state agents are responsible for that balance. It's our job to make sure they know that. It's our job to hire people that know how to do it, that have the ability to keep that structure in place. We're going to talk about how we do that in week 4. In week 5, we're going to talk about how we delegate our sovereign responsibility. In week 6, it all comes together because we're talking about how we leverage our voice. How we take our one voice and multi-level liberty, we turn it into 10 and 12 and 50 and 100 and 1,000. And you guys, it doesn't take a lot, right? You remember what he said? It's, it doesn't take a majority, it just takes an irate, tireless minority. When we start working together, we do that in 5 minutes a week. That's where these impact councils become so powerful. Get on the website, get in the impact council, and that's where we start leveraging our voice. And this is where we start, this is where we finish, right? It's the structure of our government. Not the politicians, not the policy. That's all we get whipped up about, right? Oh, go over this way, now run over this way. Oh, fight against that, memorize this, do this. No, it's the structure, it's the bicycle. And you guys, we can talk to anyone about that. Is the tire bloated or is it flat? And should we put the right tire pressure in there so that that vehicle can take us all where we want to go? And we can be diverse in our different states and we stand together because we have 2 governments, not one. We can talk to anybody about that. Structure, not politics. Got these little, some of these left, right? StructureNotPolitics.com. We have a bunch of states coming here in 2 weeks, left, right, red, blue, purple, to talk about this very thing. How do we start putting structure over politics in our nation? Because if we don't, we put liberty at peril. And we can feel how that's happening right now. And we've got to stop it, you guys, because we've got guys like this that are counting on us. You could put a picture up there, couldn't you? You've got somebody that would be there. This is my guy. But we all know we're going to answer 2 questions to them. Did you see it coming? Did you see civil war coming? Did you see debt that's so out of control it'll never be paid coming? Did you see my future being mortgaged both in debt and in dissension and division? And the second question is going to be, what did you do about it? Doesn't take a lot, you guys. I'm so excited to share with you how little time it takes. Remember, we're only talking about 5 minutes. We get through these 6 weeks, we're talking about 5 minutes because you're the answer to how we fix America, which is why I'm glad you're here, because none of us can do it alone. So you are the answer to what ails America. Thank you for being here. We'll see you next week when we talk about how the states keep that structure in balance. So thank you all. Happy to answer any questions.